All right, guys, welcome back to another Conscious Conversation podcast. This is podcast number 12, and as usual, I'm joined by Craig Seaton. This time we don't have a guest on, Craig, so it's just you and I today. How you doing, mate?
I'm very good, mate. I'm good. Yourself?
I'm really good. You know what? You always say to me, let's do a podcast at this time, and I end up taking another extra 25 minutes just to get everything set up.
We'll adjust that into the budget, I think.
So today's excuse was, as I was driving here, Fariz phoned me. So I was having a conversation with Fariz, and I'm just like, Fariz, we need to get this done over and soon because I've got a podcast to do with Craig. Plus, I need to find all the equipment in this dojo, so the extension wire, set everything up, and make sure everything's recording. So yeah, I kind of cut our conversation to about 40 minutes, and I said to him, I'll ring you back after this podcast is done, or maybe sometime later on.
You know what, man, it's a good point to work with, I think. Even let's just start off there, whether you've got something to go into as you go along, but
yeah,
like the responsibility of our own actions and choices. Like, I would be, it's something we mentioned before, but I could generally be late by 2 minutes. I'm always in this bracket where I would leave things like right to the last point, and I'd get to a session either bang on time, maybe 2 minutes late, and no matter what I would do, there would always be something that would come up. No, I'd be like, right, I'm going to change this, or I would always find a reason for myself, and still do. Like, I still have to keep myself in check with it. Something we've both discussed because it's a trait we both have, and it's. I think it was a conversation with Mickey actually, just about the taking of responsibility for everything we've got. Because let's say this phone call, for example, completely justified. You're in a phone call with a friend, whatever. Or there's something we're doing, like me, I'm just going to make my smoothie now before I go to work. And it's like, I would put the value on the thing that I wanted to do above the consideration of what I said I was going to do. And it's always that 100% responsibility. And what Sadhguru talks about is the things outside of us and how we respond to what we're going on. And yeah, it's interesting, man. And it's also the habit forming. It's like, why are these habits within us? And how do we adjust them? I've told you that I'm studying that Jungian analysis course, and a lot of our habits, good or bad, are all based down to these complexes that we have. And the complex is just being a load of different aspects of experience and personality and conditioning that are formed in one way or the other. And a really interesting part I'm going to is making an alliance to a certain complex, because we can't really escape them. It's just, which aspect of ourselves do we want to feed and move towards? And it's really interesting doing work towards that with a lot of self-reflection, is saying, right, what are my complexes for good or bad? What do I do? And what do I want to create an alliance with? Because when we're talking about forming habits and trying to release ourselves from it, they sure as hell do not go overnight. Even if it's something self-destructive, they don't go. And I know that through trying, with clients as well, trying certain things. I'm not going to do this anymore, and I might have a good stretch for 15, 20, 30 days, 2 months or something, then something will come back in and slip up. And it's not being harsh on ourselves through criticism, but seeing that it does take time and it's a steady process, how we can align ourselves with that aspect of who we want to be and how we're going to get there. And it's essentially who we are in the world, isn't it? That becomes who we are based on which alliance we have with what complex or what personality traits. That is what we're sharing out with the world. And yeah, man, what's your take?
So I just want to touch on what you just said about the habits. When the habit is destructive, have you noticed that you have no problems with riding it out? Then you'll make all the excuses. It's just a one-off. I've decided not to drink for a year, and now I'm just out in a social gathering, and the situation requires me to drink. So you will make all the excuses in the world for a destructive habit. You let that destructive habit go along, and you'll keep making excuses. It's just a second drink in the period of God knows 3 months, and I've not drank for a whole year. So you will make whatever excuse you can. But when it's a positive sort of habit that you are trying to aim towards, and you're making the conscious effort to kind of stop something negative happening to you, you will always try and put yourself down. God, why did I do that? And why I should have kept doing this? And I was doing it really well for 3 months, and now something's come up. And have you ever noticed that in yourself, where the positive ones you will really scold yourself for it, and the negative ones you will let yourself go off the hook?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's like the two sides of the coin. It would be much nicer to reframe that and go for the positive one. Is like, oh yeah, I've just done that. That's good. That's good. And the negative ones be, okay, I need to reassess and take distance from that scene. Why did that happen again? Why has that occurred again?
But you tend to make more excuses for the ones that are negative. Oh, it happened because of this and that. But then with the positive ones, you definitely will just be like, oh, I can't do this anymore. You'll over dramatize it and say, you know what, I've done this for 2 months. I've done my best. Now I can't do it anymore. And it's almost like you let yourself off the hook.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting that you said that. So how do we create this sense of discipline then? How do we make sure that we're not slipping up?
I think it takes sincere reflection. Like, it takes time is to see, for that trait that we both had, is like, why does it repeatedly happen to us? Why are we repeatedly late, whatever the margin of time? Why is that trigger in there for us to do that? And it's genuine, sincere reflection. I think for myself, if I'm being honest, it's importance of what I want to do and importance of the situation that's in front of me. Not to neglect the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, a client or the person or the meeting, whatever. But it's like that will come second into, I'm making my smoothie now, so I've got to sort my smoothie out, or I just want this extra time to finish my meditation or finish the conversation or whatever it is, because there's always reason, right? There's always genuine reason. But it's saying, if that reason, is it a genuine reason every time? Every time would it be, well, I needed my smoothie or I needed to finish that meditation. It's like, I knew that beforehand. So where is it within me that wants to continuously do that? And for me as well, there was also laziness, if I'm being honest. It's like I would stretch out my freedom of time as long as possible until the last minute. And this is the truth, man. It's like, maybe it would feel personal to people who are hopefully reflecting with us in whatever traits that they have. It's not you're not being a bad person or a good person. It's let's honestly reflect on ourselves and see, because what you just said in that good example of we'll let ourselves off for the bad habits, it's like, but then there's no reflection. We will justify it with reason, but that justification and reason is coming from support of it and letting ourselves off that hook, rather than going, right, there might be a different scenario occurring each time, but this repeats itself because it's within me. It's not the external world doing it. And I know that from like some clients or people that I know are immaculate on time, and they're on there, or generally girls that I know. So Abs is very good at that. She's bang on time. She's early for everything, and it's great because I'm the opposite of that. I'm like I'm surfing like the limit every time, and it is a trait that I really want to embody, and something that I am working with. There's been less opportunity to work with it while we're not been in work, getting into normal. It's like I'll set my Zoom up now for my online clients, and it's like, yeah, I'm pretty much either bang on or now 5 minutes early. And it's always that prioritization, and maybe not so much looking at it as I'm doing it for that thing, like I want to be on there on time for that person, but I want to be there for myself, because it also ties into patience with me. It's like the laziness, the value, and patience, like the three elements that are quite can be quite prevalent in other mannerisms that I have. And when we can start to see them, it's like, right, if I want to make that fundamental change, and it's got to be done on a day-by-day basis, I think that strong reassessment, what do I have to do? What do I need to do to them? Because when I try it and go early, there's that part of my head that goes like, yeah, but you're 10 minutes early, so what are you going to do? And you'll be 5 minutes early, so what are you going to do? That person might be late anyway, and da-da-da. And all these words come, it's like, no, all that he's doing is reinforcing the conditioning that I have. And say, right, because it feels uncomfortable. It generally does, not in a sense like fearful. It's like, it's not normal. And it's such a great example, because going out of your normality, even though it's for a benefit and something as almost trivial as what we're discussing, is a base thing, but it's like that is different for my organism to do and my mindset to get into. Therefore, it's growth. Therefore, it's change, which is only positive because it's only going to go to a good thing. It's not like it is a negative trait. So it's like starting cold showers, man. You get in there and it's like, God, it's freezing. I don't want to do this. And you're out in 5 seconds. But then you stick with it and you continue with it and you get the benefits and you adapt. And before you know it, you can't not have a cold shower because you love it so much. So yeah, it's that daily discipline comes down to literally daily discipline, reflection on the day as it comes. Not, I'm going to be like this in a month. I'm going to be like this in 3 weeks. Today. And then tomorrow. Today again, and then the next day, today again. What can I be early for? What can I tidy up for? What can I pre-planned for that helps with that. Easy said than done, but that's the real work. That's real change, right?
Yeah, I think it goes a long way if you start making those micro changes immediately. And I had the same situation with meditation and coming on time to sort of it's weird because when I was teaching class, even my own personal classes, I can only remember maybe 1 or 2 times over the last 3 years that I was late, and there was a genuine reason why I was late. And I was just thinking, okay, I get it. If you're a person, like you said, if you're a person who's consistently late for gatherings and stuff, I can almost forgive it. I mean, this is coming from an objective point of view. I can almost forgive myself and say, you know what, he's always going to be late. But then how do you have that structure and rigidity to your schedule when you are doing other things? So when I'm teaching class, how do I have that structure to make sure I'm there on time or at least 10 minutes early? Like blocks, so schedule is you have to get to the studio 10 minutes early. How do I have that? And yet I don't have that with my own. When it's a social gathering, I'll just be turning up 15, 20 minutes late. And exactly what you just said there, where that moment where you do turn up early, it's like, God, I've got 10 minutes. What the hell am I going to do for this 10 minutes? I had that same scenario just before the lockdown. My friends and I were just meeting up at Pollen Cafe, the Pollen Bakery, in the Northern Quarter. And and I was just like, this feels weird to be 15, 20 minutes early. I felt like I was going to explode. The fact that people weren't here on time. And it's something that my client and I are working through. Because he's trying to achieve flexibility, and I told him, look, the flexibility that you're trying to achieve, it doesn't matter how hard you try at it. If you take the linear approach, which is the analytical approach, where you kind of analyze everything and it's more of an academic approach, you will not succeed. With this, we have to work backwards. We have to almost let the body feel and almost be present and do what it wants to do. Whereas with other things like, coming early on time to a class or to see a client, etc., that's something where we have to take the analytical approach, where you have to be bang on with it. So I think it's a fine balance. It's interesting how people that are always bang on time always tend to not be able to relax. So when you have people come into your breath work, you notice those are the people that tend to be the ones that really stay rigid and struggle to really relax the body. I have the same with my students and my client that I'm teaching the flexibility stuff, just can't move like an athlete, because him and I had a game of catch, just a simple game of catch. And he said to me, like, how do you do it? Like, how can you just be, I'm throwing it in this direction and you're diving for it. And he goes, I don't have that in me. And I said, yeah, it's because you are over analyzing it. You're telling yourself, okay, this is what a dive is meant to feel like, and this is how you stop yourself from getting hurt. No, all I'm thinking about in that moment in time is just the ball and nothing else. So my focus is purely on the ball. And I think we have to, we have to find that fine line between the two, the middle ground between the two, and understand that, how do I switch between the two systems? And that's what I'm trying to do right now. So since I was a kid, I've always been quite sporty and athletic. So I've always had that system in me where when it comes to not premeditating things, you allow the ball to be thrown at you in a certain way and you react to it, as opposed to thinking about, okay, if he's going to throw it this way, it's most likely going to go that way. But then if he throws you a curveball, then you kind of catch yourself out, and then you kind of get frustrated out of that. So it's trying to, if you're that person that's analytical, so this is for our viewers, if you're a person that's very analytical, very academic, everything has to be in structure, try and live the life without that structure in place, just for a moment, and they'll find it just as difficult as we do. So, yeah, I find that really interesting.
Yeah, man, it is. It's, I'm grateful for Block for that 10 minutes thing, that we have to be there 10 minutes early, because it's something that I was used to. But when you do get there early and you're set up, it's a world of difference. I've really started to put the value on the benefits of being there early, which is I'm not rushing, I don't have to apologise, I'm respecting that other person's time and their presence. Even if they're late, it's like, well, if I'm there early, hands off, it's fine. And ultimately it's the better position to be in. It's better to be early than late, right? It's just how, if that person, like you're saying, the very analytical mind and left brain will be very strict up, right? Like, I'm on this time and they're working like clockwork. Yeah, that can be detrimental for sure, because we're too strict and we don't have that fluidity or that ease. And you're right, it's bigger than just a simple be early or be late. There's the personality and the softness or the strictness that goes into it as well. It's knowing the right time to place it. Like when I'm getting early on the breathwork sessions and the music's set up and I can sit there and I've got the incense going already and I can say hello to people coming in, as opposed to being there just on time and it's like, right, set that up, it just changes the vibe. And it's also the energy we're creating, because that's within us. Like what we feel then is like, if I know I'm running late, it's like, oh, I'm agitating my energy, which doesn't have to happen. While if I'll be earlier, and for people like me and you, if we're getting there early, great, we can sit there for 10 minutes and just meditate and just observe and allow the energy to be there without trying to achieve a goal so much. It would just add to bonus round of meditation time. So it's something that I want to put at the forefront. The main thing I'm working with at the minute is conjuring up compassion constantly for people and for events and what I'm seeing outside, to really help compassion be my natural state. But I'll tie that strongly into being 10 minutes early, and reducing the value on what I deem necessary myself. And if I deem that value high, make sure I get up earlier and do it, or make sure I plan that thing out to put that other person's time, or change my internal habits to one of benefit rather than last minute curve. And what you said, man, it's interesting. Then if you're on time for your classes and you're there early and there's only genuine reasons late, one, people know you're reliable, right? So they know that that's going to be that time and you'll always be there. And if you're not there, it's not the boy who cried wolf, it's something's on. Is the guy all right? Let's find out, you know? But so you had that with the classes, and then compare that to a social thing with your friends. What is the difference that you see? Like, where is that difference in your mind?
I think it's because looking deep into it and actually meditating on it, which is something you normally wouldn't meditate on. I think it's because I've always been against rigidity. Always. Like, I always hated deadlines when I was in school. I always hated exams and all that kind of stuff. And I almost see it as a negative thing when there's a time constraint on what you can and can't do. I had the same issue with presentations as well. Back when I used to present at in these Hindu sort of gatherings, and we used to present in front of the youth, there wasn't really a time limit. You know, you can go however long you want, and usually because you're quite young and you're scared, you try and keep your presentation short. So they told us it has to be more than 20 minutes. So it was the other way around. So instead of it being, it has to be below 25 minutes, etc., it has to be at least 20 minutes. So I think parts of it was created then, and then I created this idea that anything that doesn't have rigidity to it means that it's fluid. Things can come out naturally. I don't put so much pressure on myself. But then now I almost take that for granted when it comes to my friends, because I'm applying that same principle. So I'm saying I want there to be a clear distinction between work and pleasure, or work and play, etc., whatever you want to call it. And for me, that manifests into being laid back with my time schedule with my friends, and me being bang on time when it comes to my classes. And like you said, it's not a good thing. Like, I've learned that that's not a good thing, because you have people in both scenarios that are relying on you, and you can only be a responsible person if you do things on time, and you say, if someone says to you, come at this time, and you turn up on that time, then people know they can rely on you. Whereas, like you said, the boy who cries wolf, what happens if I turn up and people just be like, oh, that's just Chet being Chet, and I don't turn up on time. You know, I one time I was 75 minutes late, and it was a dinner, or it was just what do you call it? It was a meal with a couple of friends, and I was the one who planned it. So I planned the whole thing. And usually when I plan things, I'm definitely not that careless when it comes to time. I usually, 5-10 minutes, fair enough. But 75 minutes, that's more than an hour and a bit, an hour and a half of, just probably more than an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes of not turning up. And people, when I turned up, they were like, yeah, we expect that from you. Which was, again, I think that made me shine a light on it. And almost look at it as though, if they're quite laid back about that, what happens if I turned up 2 hours late and I had a reason for being that late? So it's like you said, it may just seem that, people are being rigid about their time, but at the same time, when something, for example, this lockdown has happened, if I didn't turn up on time at home, what would people think? They'd be thinking, what the hell's going on? So you have to very carefully think about these things, and I'm trying my best. I really am, and trying my best to make sure that I'm doing things in a certain time frame. Like, for example, these podcasts, apart from the one that we did with Mickey, we made sure that we were keeping the podcast to about an hour, just slightly over an hour, slightly under an hour, just so that people don't lose and the minds don't drift after that. So I think you definitely need it. I think you need that middle path.
Yeah, it's like the difference of the left side and the right side, and the analytical to the creative.
Creative,
And
yeah.
yeah, I think we're probably definitely both more to the right hand side. And it just shows, doesn't it, in the personality and the things that we do and how we treat certain things. And all it is down to awareness. Again, nothing, it's not like it's right or wrong. It's just what does that action bring about with it? You know, what is the karma associated with that, or the effect on the world around us? Because I'm very loose. I love like these talks. They're free flow. You know, we sometimes we have the topic of what we want to go into, but we just free flow it. And that's how I like it. But I also know that is a hindrance at times. I remember when I was doing the Speak Up Challenge, the public speaking course, when I first wanted to get into public speaking. And, you know, the first one I did was like out there, and it was 2 minutes. It was unplanned because it was supposed to be 60 seconds. And it's just like rambling on, and my voice was dead loud. And I was like, you know, it was the first time out there. And then the second time it was like, okay, here's your plan. Plan it about whatever you want. So I planned it down, like wrote the whole thing out, loads of bits of paper, and this was this is being super strict on the time, in the sense I was word by word reading it out, and I was like getting lost in the words and too much, you know, and it was too hard. It wasn't me, because I don't work in that way. Then the next time it was free flow about a topic I knew, didn't do any planning, 2-minute talk, and it was great, but I would go off topic a lot, and I would, you know, and I was dancing around with it, and I had to pull it back a few times, and lost my point. Then the third time it was like, right, I just did bullet points of like 4 or 5 things and allowed myself the free flow in between. And that was wonderful. That was great, because I had the support or the rigidity of, here's your points, stay with that, but do you, because I much better in free flow, 100%, which ties into lateness or not liking the restraints. Like you know so well said. Then it was better for you. It's always been that way, because you associate the time limit with control, and the word deadline. You know, it's not a nice word, and for me, it conjures up the image of the 9 to 5, and you're stuck to these rules. But in a sense, too much the other way is the anarchy, is like the freedom, and the rebel in us wants to break away from that. And it's like, okay, I'm more that way. I have to be aware of that. So I have to try and pull that back. In real life terms, man, in real life terms, like you say, for a class, there's no reason I should be late. I should be there. I should be there on time. Or for my clients, it should be, because it's planned out. And if I'm not, it's something in me to reflect on, which is great, because when we can see these things and reflect on them, that's where real growth is. That's where transformation occurs, and we absorb something more. And yes, that's working with the unconscious. Why does it occur if we don't know? It's because it's unconscious. So let's bring it to light. Let's get it out and transform from it.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever taken the 16 personality test?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Do you remember what you were?
It was the rare one. It was like 1% of the population. I can't remember what it was called. Because is it like 3 letters or something? It comes out. Yeah, I can't remember what it was.
4
letters. I've got it somewhere, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, because one of my friends, my climber friends, he asked me to do it again, because he was really curious to find out what I was. And I said to him, look, mate, I'm probably largely extroverted, but it's surprising that how my extroversion, and people say extroversion and introversion, you're born with it, but I would say it's very nuanced. Depending on where you are in life, what you experience in life as well, will depend how far of the. So I am about 40%, 45 or 46% introverted, and 54 or 55% extroverted. So I was very surprised that my balance is very, you know, it's quite balanced. It's quite in the middle. And originally, when I took the test back 10 years ago, exactly about 10 years ago, I was definitely leaning towards the extroversion side more. But yet, the character or the archetype it came out with was I was known as a campaigner. I've still stayed as a campaigner, but it's just a different degree of it now. So I think the letters have just slightly changed for me, and I found it really deadly fascinating that certain questions I remember when I took back then. So there was a question, for example, if you were in a crowded room, would you rather be at the edge of the room or in the center of the room? And for me, it was always about being on the edge of the room, because I'm generally quite claustrophobic, and I don't like to be in tight spaces, in the middle of tight spaces especially. And I found this test deadly fascinating so those questions, it stayed the same, the answers stayed the same, but other questions like, so if you were to meet, if you're in a group of new people, would you be the first one to start up a conversation? And I was like, generally speaking, yeah, I'd probably be the first one to start a conversation, but I wouldn't try and try and be the center of attention all the time now. Whereas back 10 years ago, that's the only thing I ever wanted. I just wanted attention from people, because when I was growing up, being a middle child, I never really got their attention. So it's amazing how 10 years and you just change as a person. And now whatever you were attached to before, you are no longer that person anymore. And it ties in with what we just said about time management, where, 10 years ago, if you asked me, well, not even 10 years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, if you said to me, look, Chet, I want you to be a bit more strict about your time and come on this time, I'll just say, this is the person I am. I can't help being this person. And now if you ask me that question, I'll just be like, okay, I can try and do that now. So it's definitely really interesting how we do change characteristics as we go along with time, with the experiences we experience. And it's not all about genetics. And I think people blame it on that. Oh, I was born with this, or I'm never going to be different. Or, people try and make all sorts of excuses. And again, it ties in with what we just said at the start. When it's something that's a negative sort of effect on you, a negative excuse, you will just put it out there. Oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. And it's whatever excuse you give yourself to forgive yourself for making really shitty mistakes.
Yeah, we have the different personality traits that come out at different times. Like anytime just to go with the same example, I've been early. I've always felt good about it. I've never been like, oh, bloody hell, I'm regretting coming early. It's always been, this feels good, this is nice. While when I'm just hitting on time or running late, it's always, I don't like this. Why do I do this? Why do I always put that thing or not even a thing, I always allow myself to be on that minute. And it's like, I've not enjoyed it for years. I'm 32. And it's still there, because it hasn't been given the full light to put on it and go, just make this one thing, forget everything else, because everything else is habit anyway. They're fine. Just put the light on this one thing for a month and see what happens, making sure I'm there every time. And to do it with ease, as in the sense of not easy, but as in the sense of ease and there's no stress. It's like, I'll get there for that time. There's not pressure to do it. Just do it because lighten the emotions, it wants to do it because there's benefit there and it comes out as a rewarding circumstance. Because we do change. Like, how can I be on time sometimes and not the others? It's mood, it's emotions, it's attitude, it's where I'm at. And generally when good practice has been in place, it happens more easy and more frequently. I've noticed that if I've got, like with this time off, I've been doing a lot of my coursework and getting it done every day, and it's, right, I'll get up in the morning, make sure I have my drink, do my meditation, my breath work, have my shower, and then get onto coursework. And then because I'm normally up earlier before Rabs is, and if he comes in wants to talk, I feel this like, I've not finished my coursework yet, so I want to get that done. And it's like, again, I'm putting myself forward to accomplish the tasks, which can make me more, I suppose, easily, what's the word? Irritated, I guess, by anything external of myself. And it's like, work in the real world, but when I know I've got these things ticked off, then there's freedom and space. So it's going, okay, until I've got this work done or I've done this thing, can I just have my time till that's done in like 2 hours? And it's like, yeah, great. And then it works so well. It's having that system in place or knowing your own personal system that gets us to achieve those points before they become the natural habit, which takes time till it's integrated. I think it works with the moon cycles. It's like 30 days to disrupt the habit, then 60 days to install the next habit, and then another 30 days, so 90 days, so you've penetrated it. So it's a long time, really, and we have to be really committed to want to make that change, because it's not just going to come on its own. I think there are circumstances that will help us in that lifetime, like the people that you're around or the friends or what people say to you or bring to your attention. Just go, right, I'll work on that. But it's also preparing to be committed. Do you really want to change? Do you really want to accept this? Because I agree, when people are like, oh, it's just who I am. It's who you are now, but who you are now doesn't have to be who you were 5-10 minutes ago, a day ago, a year ago. It's down to ourselves, because we can only understand ourselves or the question or what we want to change from the perspective that we've got. So if we're resistant to it, like, no, I'm just stuck, unconscious, gone to sleep, like, no, can't change, unconscious, right? Then we're stuck, then we become rocks. Consciousness is having a choice. It's duality. It's always seeing there is a choice every single moment, and we have to become conscious of that if we want to change and grow. And it's so much easier not to, right? So much easier to be unconscious and let the automatic habits take over. Especially when you get towards our ages, when you've sort of almost defined who you are and how we're going to be. And it's easier to put our feet up then, when it's like, no, life will never stop. As long as we're conscious, there will always be a choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think this lockdown is a good indication of that. It's allowed us to explore those areas. And I feel as though, and I was just saying it to Fareez just about an hour ago when I was on the conversation with him, I feel as though in this period, especially now being fully into this brahmachari path, I have this creativity and this vigor that I had back then when I was a kid. So I've not experienced this level of creativity since I was a child. And I know that when it comes to time management, when it comes to creatives in general, we can spend 12 hours doing something straight, and after that, you'll have to take like another maybe a couple of days off. But once that project is finished, you can literally spend maybe 3 days, 72 hours straight just doing that without hardly any rest. And then when the time requires, when the completion has been done, you will now rest for that time. And I think the way the 9 to 5 structure works and the way society works these days is we've limited that. So for people that work in those short, long, but well, it's not long, I would say short, but really intense spells, we've almost eliminated that, and we've only kept it to certain careers. So if you're a musician or if you're well off in general, if you're quite wealthy, then you can probably give yourself a bit more time to work on things and really focus on it. And I just think maybe it's not just, and again, I'm not trying to make an excuse for people like us, but maybe it's not just a you and I individual thing. Maybe it's a societal thing. Like I said previously, maybe, the idea of deadlines being there and assignments being there, that is the 9 to 5 structure. That is the structure that says this needs to be done at this time. And I can fully understand that, because I've always been a person that prefers to have a dog chasing me than me having to almost set a goal forward and say, I need to accomplish this goal. I've never been that person. I'd rather have something really catching up with me. So my best work has been when there's been a deadline and I've literally started doing it 3 days before the deadline. I think that's when I really thrive under pressure. Whereas some people are not like that. And I think the way the education system has brought us up is to almost become one of those cogs in the wheel, to become that person that works on this 9 to 5 schedule, checks in and checks out. And I don't think we're in a situation where it helps us. If I give you a scenario, if let's say society was flipped upside down and now society worked on our sort of schedule where you would go through short bursts but hardcore bursts of just creativity, intensity, locking yourself in a room and just getting the thing done, how do you think people would be? I don't think people would be able to survive, right? There'd be hardly any relationships. They would, well, in a sense, there would have to be more trust. How can you be away from someone for like a week or so whilst he's working on a project? So how do you think people will deal in a situation like that?
Well, if they were forced to, everybody to try that scenario where you go away and work on, again, personally, I think I'd thrive in a situation where, here, you've got this to do. As long as it's something of work, like go make these videos, go and write out this coursework, go write a book, whatever, meditate. Because like you say, the creative side or the right side can spend that time doing it. And this is why there's different people in the world for the different scenarios and situations, as we learn from both sides. While when it's structured a 9 to 5, it's the military, isn't it? It's very militant, which is really away from emotion and understanding, because that 9 to 5 rigid discipline is controlling, but it gets results. But it's how do you get the results? Is that always how you go about it is just as important as the result itself, I think. So it's trying them out, isn't it, and seeing what works. Like you said, if you had that 3-day deadline and you did it 3 days earlier and you got the best work out of it, and it's maybe admitting that more often, for myself as well at least, is to admit that more often, is that is good. I just don't like the pressure, because I can then go too far the other way and apply too much pressure on myself to have it done by this certain point. Like this coursework, I've got six modules left to do, and it's like, I want to get these done first before I start my next coursework, which makes sense, which does make sense. But it's like, at times when I get too into it, I will want to shut everything else out, and it's like, well, that's not really that healthy, because I am able to do both of these things. I am able to do this coursework each day and just ease off. But it's interesting how we can ease off with the discipline, get the discipline done, but don't be so forceful with it. I suppose it's always down to where the individual is at their time. How do they really need to tighten the belt more to get into it, or do they need to loosen it? And yeah, like right side people, it's just much easier to be in a flow. But there's also the reason why artists or creative painters, musicians are generally more messy and more scatterbrained with, or not as good with money and things like that, because it's so loose. There isn't the discipline to harness the strength of being a bit more tighter, and that's because it is predominantly right brained. And yeah, if you think of the people like that, that's generally how it is. Not all of them, but it is that mixture. What can we attain from the other side, which will really benefit the side that we're on?
Do you think those people are inclined to take more risks? Because I feel as though, and it's very difficult to explain it to people that don't understand that. So let me give you an example. I noticed that you liked my recent post on my Instagram, the free solo. So I was always curious about Alex Honnold's free solo that he did of El Cap in Yosemite. I was like, I just want to experience a tiny glimpse of that to understand what it feels like to be fully alive, but not fully alive in the sense, because when people say, oh, I feel fully alive, it's either you're in extreme levels of pleasure, or you're skydiving, or you're having a sort of a thrill-seeking experience. Adrenaline, yeah, and I don't think that is fully living. I think fully living is to be present and to have those sort of fluctuations in your body at ease. They're in control. So I feel like when Alex did the climb, the 3,000-foot climb on El Cap, every move had to be precise. There was a level of danger to it, but every move had to be precise. So when I did my 20-foot or 25-foot climb, I felt it. The climb was not difficult by all means. It was a very easy climb. If you'd have done it on a rope, you would have just whizzed past it. But the fact that you've taken the rope away adds a different element to it. Now you have to really trust yourself. You have to make sure that your foot placing, your hand placing are perfect. And so once you make that commitment, there is no going back. So if I make a move and I feel, oh shit, I don't feel comfortable about this move, and there was a brief period when as I got to the top, I got a little too excited, and I was like, oh, I'm at the top almost. And I noticed that. I noticed that little that sort of giddiness kicking in, and that caused my adrenaline to start kicking in a bit more. And I thought, okay, that is not where I want to be. I want to be nice and calm. I want to be composed, making sure that the move I'm making right now is the one I want to go with. So I realized in that moment in time that it is the purest, and when people say feeling like you're alive, I think that's what it is. Like, your sensation, you're feeling your breath. And credit to my friends that were dead silent. They were completely quiet. No one was saying, yeah, do this and do that. Or, we normally encourage each other when we're climbing with a rope. We tell people, oh, if you're struggling with that move, try this move out. But they trusted that I could complete it, and they trusted that to make sure that they were silent enough that I don't get put off by any sort of external factors. So yeah, it was a really interesting feeling, and I remember walking away from that thinking, I didn't feel like it was any different than a normal climb. If I climbed with the rope, it just felt exactly the same as that. But I knew 100%, like more than 100% probably, I just knew hands down that every single move I'm making right now is exactly what I want to do. It's exactly how I want to do it as well. And if I fell through an external factor, so yes, when we were climbing yesterday, I remember when a massive piece came off the wall. That wasn't the free solo, but that was when I was attached to a rope. Massive piece came off the wall. Now, those kind of factors, you have those factors that come into play as well. So if I was free soloing and a massive piece came off, that's a good chance I'm going to fall off the wall. But it's just having the confidence to know that you'll be okay, and it's a really amazing feeling. And I've never felt a feeling like that before. I know that through meditation and through going within, there are other experiences that you will have that will tie you in with life, will make you experience life in the sense that it's not just you in this body, it's beyond you. But this experience of you feeling the whole of what your body is giving out to the world, to feel that is just something else. I don't know if you ever experienced that kind of life, that sort of experience before.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. It's quite a lovely example, for what you did to do it free solo and just get up there without the restraints. And there's so much in it. And there's a line that says it's dangerous to be alive. And it is, because when you're living an actual life where you're alive, it involves freedom and insecurity. Because if you're secure, you're not alive, because we're holding on to something. We've got a safety barrier somewhere, which is in the example you're using is the climbing. Like you get to experience the climbing when you've got the harness on, which is great, because you need that. You need that level of training and the ability to be secure when you're learning these practices. But when you take that off and you let it go, you transforming the whole thing. You're onto another level. There's real consequences involved there, not just, oh crap, I fell, and you lose your stomach a little bit, but you're safe ultimately. It's every step counts, every action, every movement has a consequence from it. And it's a big reason why we live in such a secure way with the 9 to 5, or with amassing money, or the house and the partner, or the secure job, because there's a level of security that comes with that. But that's not being alive. You can live well, and it can help you reach other things that you want, where you can then place that aliveness in, for sure. But for what you're doing, it's like you have to be able to let go to experience fully. And when you accomplish something like that as well, you grow massively, because you know what you're capable of. You can face fears, you can see reality as it is, because we're not holding on to the training wheels anymore. And this, I think, comes in par with our actual insecurities and our anxieties and our fears, and what will this person think if I tell the truth, or if I say this. And it's like all of those are the harnesses. Oh, I won't say anything, I'll keep the harness on, because that way we're not living fully. We play the game. We know we can climb the wall, and if we fall, we're all right, because we're playing the game. We're not fully out there with the reality. And it's a different way to live. So yeah, the experience of that, man, it's like what we were saying about the left brain and the right brain with the timekeeping, or climbing with the harness, as you're saying, is one of the big attractions for me when I was using plant medicines and having sessions with plant medicines was you have to let go of your mind. You don't have a choice. You're climbing without the harness, and you take a strong enough dose of the medicine, you're going somewhere where your mind and your sense of self cannot go. And that's why it's dangerous for very strong left brain people, in a sense. If we're not willing to change our perception, not just with plant medicines but in life, that's where our conflict and resistance comes from in the external world. Well, this person thinks that and they say this, and like, no, I'll go to war with them for that. I will fight them, in fact, for what they've said, because it disrupts my life view so much. I will not allow it to be a reality. So when you're doing something like that, you take the plant medicines, you've got to be willing to let go. And there you'll find something new, because you can't be alive. You won't find something new if we're repeating the same patterns and the same habits and living the same way. That sense of freedom, that flow is like, it's ecstasy, isn't it? You let go and you are alive, and yeah, it's magic, man.
Okay, so yeah, I want to touch on what you just said about the being alive when you're taking plant medicine, or psychedelics in a way. So it's exactly that. You wouldn't do it. So if you're a newbie to psychedelics and exploring that realm, you wouldn't just walk in there and just take a bag of mushrooms, or you wouldn't take ayahuasca, or you wouldn't take iboga, or what's it called? Iboga? Yeah. Yeah, and those sort of hardcore psychedelics, you wouldn't just walk in and just be like, go from zero experience to the full experience itself. I just think that's carelessness, if you do it that way. I think the real way of doing it is small doses, microdosing. I'm not speaking from experience, but from what I can see, from what I did with climbing as well, it was never, you don't free solo, you don't walk in there and just free solo it. You understand that route. So I had done that route previously with the harness on, with the rope on, to build that confidence, to realize, okay, I've been climbing for about a year and a half non-stop now. I should be confident enough to do a route like that. And then I tried the route out, and then I just thought, I've done that route, a while ago. I should be able to try and do it without it. I think that's the purest way of doing it. I get why people do it now. I really do understand it. There's something else called free slacklining. So you do free solo slacklining. So normally when you do highlining, you're above maybe 300 foot or 60 foot or whatever, you have a drop underneath you, and you have this extra safety line that attaches to the slack line on a carabiner. So when you fall off, at least that's caught you. Now, when you're free solo slacklining, you don't have that. You just have the drop. So if you fall off, you have to make sure that you can latch onto the slack line. So I was watching these guys doing it, and that's when I started pondering these ideas. I'm like, the only true way of living is to live to go beyond the limitations. And like you said about the personality thing where you belong to 1%, this is probably like 0.01% of the population. You know, it's a very small percentage of the population that are willing to take that risk and almost, I don't see it as a risk. I've always felt like it doesn't feel like a risk because you are 110% sure that you are not going to fall off. It's not a risk when you know that you're not going to lose. So when you're gambling or whatever you're doing, you're wagering with your money, if you know you're going to win, how is that gambling? You know it's definitely not gambling. So it's in the same concept when you are taking these psychedelic drugs or these plant medicine, from previous experience of maybe using the same one or maybe using a different one, you know for sure that you are pretty competent in fully letting go. And obviously maybe the barrier is to fully let go, and maybe that's where the art is, to fully let go. But you are confident and competent to know that if you do that, you'll be fine. You know, you might get doubts in between, which is normal, you know, that's just being human, but you know fully well that you are willing to fully let go. And I think just most people are not willing to do that. And I've always wondered whether that, again, is an innate trait or it's something conditioned. People have told you, what the hell do you think you're doing climbing without a rope? Or what do you think you're doing just going straight in there with, you know, ayahuasca or, you know, the hardcore sort of psychedelics? So maybe it's also that other people are, it's the background noise that puts you off at the same time. For the person, well, not just the person doing it, because the person doing it, you know, the person, once he's done it once, he's somewhere down the line, maybe he's not going to do it every day, but somewhere down the line, he's probably going to do it again. But it's usually people, let's say if you and I were in a group of people, and most of the people that we're with have never tried breath work or hardcore meditation or psychedelics, and we're just having a discussion and people are asking the question, should you experiment with the more hardcore sort of psychedelics? And your response would be, of course, you know, it's again, it's something that it's a part of you, it's made who you are right now, and you're fully up for that idea. But then I feel like other people tend to discourage other people around them, people that are may have the doubt and the inquiry and the curiosity to want to try it out, but because the majority are thinking, what the hell do you think you're doing, it usually puts a large percentage of the population down. And I feel like this is the same with inventions and stuff. Look at Nikola Tesla, you know. His inventions only became famous, God knows, 100 years after he died. It's only because people were telling him that you shouldn't be offering this to the world for free, you know, you should be making money off this and that. And he's just like, you know what, this is all just background noise. You know, screw you guys. Yeah,
it's knowing where you are on your individual level. I think when you're a beginner, like the climbing, for instance, you know, I've done indoor climbing, a little bit of outdoor climbing, but I could probably do a free solo, but not at the height that you did it, half of that. You know, somewhere there, if I fall, I'll be all right. Might hurt my ass a little bit, but I'll be okay. So it's knowing where the individual level is and what it is that you're going into, because like you said before, it's about training. You wouldn't go straight up into Yosemite and climb that massive wall. So that's where there's power in knowledge and in attaining the knowledge that you require for the thing that you want to do. And you know, if you say the hero's journeys, the hero always generally loses in the first battle with the villain, always falls down, learns from it because they were too eager, too ready to go too far too soon. And then you get kicked in the ass and you're like, oh right, I really need to consider why that occurred, when we can go gradually and steadily and build up. And I think when you're playing with things like climbing, your life's potentially at stake. Psychedelics, your reality and your understanding of personality is going to be completely pulled away from you. And how do we work with those situations? And that's where there's preparation steps. Though there are some people who are naturally athletically gifted, or they've got a strong sense of letting go and understanding what the mind is, and that the personality is just constructed anyway. So it's much easier to let go in those circumstances. But those people who are so resistant, are they like, that's dangerous, don't do that, or why would I want to let go of myself and all this stuff? It's because it doesn't mean that activity wouldn't be beneficial. It just means that there's more danger involved, because it can be what's required. It can be what they need for that massive perception change. The exhilaration of a zip line or a free climbing, or the release of taking a psychedelic, which will completely disrupt your sense of ego and personality to go, and you realize there's something more going on, and you can have those awakenings. So it could be for that person, but it's always best to be cautious. It's always best to understand what we're getting into. to allow that transformation and that sense of something new to come about. Like you say, when you're 40 years old, your mind is generally meant to be set. You know, how you've been thinking and how you are is more likely cemented at that point. So it's ideally to build an open mind through our life, you know, before we get to that point, so we're not so closed off. And there's so much freedom in knowing that we don't know all of it, or knowing that we're wrong, or knowing that we don't have to be right, because then we release those kinds of the personality that want to be victorious, or they want to know, or they want to lead the way. Because where are they coming from and where are they taking us to? If we think we know, we don't. Like Tesla, what you say now is like, I'm just going to give it out for free. Like, it might be wrong. Maybe I should make money, but he was fine how he was. He'd always got his way around, and he had these great ideas that were of benefit to other people. So he went off and did that. Or people who discover new lands, you know, when we were out venturing the world or going to the moon. And we don't know what's going to happen. We have an idea because we've set the plans down. We've used the left brain. We've become disciplined and we've figured things out. But the right side requires the adventurous and the creative aspect of ourselves to go forth into it and discover what it is by living it. Because you can't live it by knowing it. That's not know it. That's not living. That's knowledge. That's for the intellect. Living is through the emotion and through the heart and through the experience. And never holding on to any of either sides of that. Just making them a unison.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, going with everything that you just said there, I think it also comes back, when you talk about the individual, it comes back to the word confidence again. You know, confidence, having full confidence, knowing that you will be okay. So if you go on your psychedelic adventure, you know that you, even though your reality and your perspective of life and what you think existence is will be changed, you know fully well that will be a positive change for you. You have to have that confidence in you. And I feel like as we're growing up, we're always, even though you're really good, you might be the best in your field, why do all the people that are some of the best people in their field still feel quite insecure? It's because people put this idea that, you know, are you confident with what you're saying? Are you sure about what you want to do and this and that? You know, you've got people around you that are just telling you that, whether it's the media or whether it's friends that you've got around you, you know, pointing you down and just saying, you know, what you're doing is stupid and this and that. You should be thinking about people that will be affected by you dying and this and that. And I just feel it, in a way, we tarnish our potential. We never reach. How many humans can you name that reach their full potential, that you thought reached their full potential? There aren't many, because we've been surrounded by a culture of people that, first of all, they don't want to get out of that safety net. You know, they want to be in that cave whilst their mates are hunting the larger animals for food and meat, but they don't want to get out of that cave. And it's the same concept as what people are doing today. You don't want to get out of that cave. I can respect that. I have full respect for anyone that is not willing to almost like think for themselves. If you have to have someone else that's thinking for you and telling you what to do, okay, I can respect that. But then don't tell me that I should do that as well. You know, I think that's where my problem comes in, when people try and, first of all, they've never experienced anything as close to that, or they're not willing to experience that. I think that's worse. They're not willing to experience that, but then yet they'll turn around and tell you what's best for you. And I just feel, for me, that is an ultimate sign of disrespect, to almost have someone that's never, you know, experienced anything like this before come over to you and say you're wrong, or try and tell it indirectly by, you know, I don't know, unfollowing you because they don't believe in what you believe in, and all that. And again, like I said to you, I have no problem in people having their own insecurities and living in their own worlds and having problems and stuff. Everyone has those issues, but it's when you start pushing those issues on other people and saying, well, if I have this, if I can't go and climb out there, neither can you. You should stay indoors as well. I think that's when the problem comes. And that's what we have with the psychedelic realms. We have, obviously, most psychedelics in this country are illegal, right? They're classed into grades of you know, class A drugs, class B drugs, etc. They are illegal for a reason. It's because most people taking those substances will not have the experience they want to have. They won't have the magical experience that most other people have. And then from that, they almost try and make a collective decision for the whole of society to say this stuff should be completely avoided because this is what will happen to you. Whereas substances like alcohol and smoking, for some reason, that is universal. You can go and do as much of that as you want, but then when you want to talk about psychedelics, people don't want to, you know, tread their toes in those realms.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an agenda towards the illegality of them, of psychedelics, and that was with the 60s and the 70s in America. There's research to be done there to look at the reasons why and what occurred with the hippie movement and against Vietnam and the free love sort of thing, which in honesty probably did get too loose. It probably did get like really funny how the conversations, the themes there throughout this whole talk is it got too right-sided where no, everything's fine, let it all be, and there was no discipline and no structure. Like we need both of them, and that's why we have different types of people, and it's finding the unison. Like nobody's fully right. Like the truth is only half of it. No matter what it is, it might be a full. We might see it as a full truth, and this is where the value in even when you know your truth is right, that you're still wrong somewhere with that truth because it's not applicable to everybody, and it's allowing people to have that and to let it fully go into. I mean, I think the law, the legality on psychedelics needs to change, but they shouldn't all be legal because there's the people who shouldn't take it. I've experienced my own bad trips, quotation marks, which I've always pulled so much benefit from anyway, but I have the mind to do that and the understanding to do that. And I've seen people have trips where they shouldn't have taken psychedelics because they weren't in the right position for it. It's something that needs to be evaluated with psychologists and the people who are trained specifically for that. Right, what's your mental, like breath work? Shouldn't be doing breath work if you've experienced forms of psychosis. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever do it, but you want to be with trainers and the right people. Even something as breathing, because we're entering alternate states of consciousness through that. It's like, we need to know what it is that person's into. Is there health and safety behind it? Now, if psychedelics were all legal, it would do more good than bad, but there would be bad elements that would come with it too as well. Like, let's just say in the same example, you had someone younger with you training. He's like, okay, I'll show you how to do this free climb. He's like, nah, he's cocky and arrogant. He's like, I'm fine, don't worry, I'll do this. I've never done it before, but don't worry. Might do it the first 2 or 3 times. 4th time, he might fall. Like using the example you said before, when that adrenaline came, such a good point is you realized the control was out of your hand. Maybe not so much control, but the awareness, because when you are alive, there is the element of uncontrol, and that's where the feeling of that aliveness comes, not from the thrill, but the possibility is open because we're not controlling it as much. It's I'm in control of me, where I move. As long as I'm acutely aware, I'll get through this. I'll know how to do it, and you can do it almost faultless, as the fellow who did Yosemite, as he did, incredible. And it's developing that sense of mind to be aware in what we're doing, focusing on every step. The Jedi mindset is you're here now, you're not looking at the horizon, focus on what you're doing and be with it. And it's such a wonderful way to live because we're not in the past or the future. We're not looking for the achievement. Like, such a good example, man. You were that close to the top, and those natural parts of, yeah, I'm almost there, nailed it. And that is where we will falter. And you just look at celebrity stories for that. People who've amassed a big fortune, or they're at the peak of their celebrity and they think they can do anything. Let's reference Scarface, how it goes from his rags to riches story and how he ends up, because the mindset hasn't been developed enough to work with that level of abundance or understanding or empathy or whatever that we haven't developed. It's just been I'm getting to there and I'm going to keep looking ahead without seeing what's around us. And that applies to climbing, to psychedelics, to conversation, to anything. And it's the amazing experience of developing our awareness, our consciousness, to know anything can happen at any minute. But if we shy away from that and living, that's when we go into those boxes, and that's when you'll have these people say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. No, don't go free climbing. No, don't take psychedelics. And because they've been fed by the worry pots and they're stuck in the box that keeps them secure and alive, but they will never experience life. They will not live. They will just be existing. They won't be alive.
So how do we almost encourage that without seeming as though we're trying to sell it? How do we encourage it in a very positive way?
Man, what is there to sell? Do you want to experience life, or do you want to just live? Do you want to just exist and not do anything? Yeah. Like, what are you excited about? What do you want to do? What is it that you wanted to be when you were a kid? What would you close your eyes and see the ultimate, coolest, amazing version of yourself? Like, I wanted to be a stuntman when I was a kid. And then as I grew up and I was seeing there was so much involved, like you had to learn martial arts, you had to learn this and that, so many different things. But there are still elements of that wanting to be a stuntman that I have in my life. I practice with the bow staff all the time. I do climbing or a bit of parkour or practice rolling, martial arts, stuff that I took off away from being a career, but that made me feel alive because that was what I was interested in. And they're those kind of sports, those elements where you have freedom within them. It's not so linear. So to become alive is literally what will make you alive. Like the easiest way I think is when you were a kid, what was it that you want to do? And when you're an adult, what is it that you want to do? Can you see the parables and the links there that you can go into and give your time and effort to, and give the energy towards? Because that's what living is. Like nobody else can do it for you. Somebody else is telling you how to live. You're not going to live. You need to figure it out. Just know that you have the freedom if you choose to go and do whatever the hell you want to do, because you can. You can go and do it. You can go and learn it. You're never too old. Whatever it is, man, it might just be, I want to dance in the street. Go dance in the street. Find some freedom. And notice how it feels when we drop the inhibitions. And you were talking about confidence earlier, and the confidence comes with that, with giving into who you are, with what it is that your individual nature wants to do, that is away from the external conditioning and the thoughts and the values and the morals of the masses. Like there's something to learn in that, but it's more so about your life. Yeah, you're the expression of you. You have the innate joys and the things that naturally you want to live without your knowledge of knowing why. You're born with it. You're born with wanting to do these things. You're born with these attractions. Yes, there's certain conditioning along the way that pulls us to things. Let's get beyond that and see, naturally, why do you want to do those things? Perhaps there isn't an answer. We'll try and describe it, but the emotion and the energy is its own thing. There's a reason that it's there for us, because that is how this individual flower blooms in the field of other flowers. And as you said, that 0.1%, whatever it is that attain their potential, is because they're choosing that path. They're making a choice to go down that path. I don't care how much money it takes. I don't care what friends, family, or relationships I gain or lose. I don't care what people think. This is my path. Tesla did it. Tesla was doing that. Here's these crazy inventions that will change the world. Give them out for free. Oh, what about the money? What about your income? No, that's conditioning. It's not required. It can give you access to certain things, but he still did it anyway. He was still funded by people. Then he was broke. Then he was funded again. It's like, if you give to it, you'll find your way, but using knowledge and the understanding to make it a smoother journey.
Yeah. So wrapping this all together, so from what we talked about being right side dominant on the brain or left side dominant, from what you're saying, it seems as though that it's usually the right side of the brain, people that are right side dominant, that tend to be the ones, again, we said just about 20 minutes ago that it's the ones that tend to be a bit more risk-taking, because the thing is, you put your marbles in your bag and you pull out the ones you know that are obviously the ones that are too extreme for your level. You know that is a bit too much of a risk, and then the marbles that you are left with, you start to almost see those marbles as ones that are not risk-taking anymore. When we talk about risk-taking, I think there's a misconception between actual risk-taking. So, you know, if I jump into a hole, but I don't know the depth of the hole, that is risk-taking. If I go into a cave and I don't know how small the cave is or what's inside of that cave, that's risk-taking. When you experience bits and pieces of it, when you experience different levels of it and you are more experienced in that field, and then you jump in, then you know that, oh, actually, if I go into this cave from 100 caves I've been in before, this sort of cave with these dimensions and the noises I'm hearing from the cave means that it won't be that risk-taking. You know, it won't be that risky. So things that end up being risky for people, or, you know, considered as a risk for other people, tend not to be risk for people that have already previously experienced something similar. So, you know, I think risk taking is the measurement of experience compared to a lack of experience. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, great way to say it, man. I really like that. It's such a good way to measure it, because, again, I forget the fella's name, the guy who did the free solo. Yeah. Like him climbing what you've done, it'll be nothing for him, because he's climbed that ridiculously tall mountain. You know, he will assess it and he might find dangerous parts, but go, right, boom, I'll go up that way. But that was a risk to him once. It was. And that's why it's incredible. And that is how we organically evolve. It's such a good metric that you've used. Like, the risk diminishes and it becomes secondary. And that is any discipline. Like, I think the same with my bow staff. Man, or the nunchucks, the amount of time to crack my elbows and my head. I give myself I put up a black eye once trying this move. And it's like, it didn't stop me because I loved it. I love doing it. It's like, that's part of the game. That's part of the risk. It's a measurable risk. I might get injured, but nothing too crazy is going to hurt. Is going to cost me, you know. While what the free solo fella's doing, that could cost his life. Like, he had to go in willing to die. He had to. I might mess up there. I mean, you can have that sense of mind, that confidence that goes, I am going to do it. The other side of that, which I think comes with that confidence, is not necessarily that 100% full belief, but also I'm willing to accept the cost. Mm-hmm. And then you get confidence with it. I'm willing to share my views out, my truth. I'm willing to take what anybody says about it. I'm willing to you know, take whatever price comes with it. And that's freedom. That's freedom there. We're not waiting for somebody else to do it for us. As you said before, Krishnamurti is big on that with society. He's like, everybody's waiting for somebody else to do it for them. They're waiting for the government to say, this is what we do. Or they're waiting for their friend to say, oh, you know, go and do that. Or this is how you should live. You can't find your life through that. And I know that because I've tried for years, is following the words and teachings. Get things that work for you, yeah. But know that you have to walk the path, not just talk about it. Knowledge is different from living. You have to live it.
Yeah, completely. I completely resonate with what you just said. So there's two sides of it. There's either you accept the risk as, you know, you're 100% sure, you're absolutely 110% sure there is zero risk for you to fall. Again, going back to the climbing analogy, 0% risk of you falling. And then there's the other side where you fully accept the consequences if it happens. So then that doesn't become a burden on you. There's a guy I used to follow many years ago, about 10 years ago, Jeb Collis. He was known for wingsuit proximity flying. So you'll have the wingsuit on if you've watched, that go down 200 miles an hour. And proximity flying is he tries to go as close to a cliff face and the close to land as possible. And he knows the smallest error means splat, he's dead. And it's happened to his colleagues and his mates as well. So watching him and watching his story, he said, they clinically diagnosed him, because everything has to be clinically diagnosed these days. So they clinically diagnosed him for counterphobia, which is the opposite. So if he doesn't have scenarios in his life where he almost pushes himself to the limit, to the point where, you know, it could be a risk, he feels depressed and, you know, all of the mental health stuff kicks in. And I remember thinking about that, and he said when he was growing up, he became very suicidal. So for him, it was a win-win situation. So jumping off, so he did base jumping first before he went into wingsuit proximity flying. He said, if I jumped off a base and my chute didn't come out at the right time, or I timed it wrong and I died, that was a win-win situation for me, because I want to commit suicide. So I was just thinking to myself, it's exactly what you just said. It's either you are fully aware that whatever you're doing can go either way. Either you will die from it, and you have to accept that you will die from it, or you are 100% confident that you will not die from it. So I think there's a really, maybe it's a fine line, but maybe it's just the same thing. I think it's explaining, it's like the half glass empty and half glass full analogy, where it's the same concept, but you're explaining it in a different way, or shedding a light in a different way. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I just think we need to weigh which category we're falling into depending on the exercise or activity that we were doing.
Yeah, it's the point of individualization as well. It's like, who do you want to be? What are you giving your life to? Because whatever we're doing, our life in one form or the other is built up of the obsessions. So whatever obsession we're going to focus on is going to drive us. And it's happening regardless, whether it's the obsession to be secure and to stay indoors and everything's too dangerous, so my obsession is to stay in, or the obsession is to, I'm going to base jump, or now I'm going to jump off the cliff. Like that wingsuit, I think they're absolutely amazing. I love them. Yet it's probably edging too much to suicidal in the sense, because the death rate is big. The death rate is big with those things. Well, is it that guy who lost his missus and his best friend, and he still does it? And that's not to say, I'm not saying that that's wrong again, because as we said, we can't tell each other what's right or wrong. But from a level of balance, it's like, right, is it more of a death wish and you just no longer care? You know. So there is the balance, and it's your life at the end of the day.
I think the fascination, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the fascination is those people that have lost those people, look at their reactions, look at how they are psychologically, because Alex Honnold has lost a large portion of his mates that have tried free soloing. So, there's a very small group of people that actually do free soloing. And he's lost really close friends, climbing friends that have died. And the way he reacts to it is just like, this person's died. Oh well, that's too bad. And people see that as almost callous, but I don't think it is. I just think it's his way of dealing with that situation, because think about it, it's not you that will deal with it as a person that dies. It's the people that you care about, the people that are close to you that will suffer. So they have to be fully aware that what you're doing is, one day you will not come back. They have to be fully aware of that and come to terms with it. And I think that in itself is a liberation in itself as well. So to come to terms with death, to know that everything will die, again, only a small percentage of the population have that perspective of life in that way.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably breaching into the realms of another topic here as we're getting close to wrapping up. But it's like, what is it, that thing that we're giving our life to? Is it just something for us to accomplish? Again, I'll just use Scarface as the reference. Like, it doesn't have to be you become a massive kingpin and a drug dealer and get loads of money, but he started off wanting a better life, and it turned into, through that life of crime, which was all he knew, and it ended up being his downfall. And it's like, when we're climbing things like Everest or the wingsuits, once you've done it and we've achieved it and we've figured it out, why do we continue to go down that route? Because maybe now it's just about the exhilaration and the feeling, which is so fleeting that it's passive, it's gone. Because in that moment of freedom, like coming back to the free climbing or the psychedelics, there is freedom there. We're away from any boundaries and borders, and we're alive. That can become negative and addictive, because how do we integrate that back into reality? And if we don't have the methods of doing that, we're just stuck on something that might not actually be for us anymore or a wise thing to do. While you've got the people who were taking the first rockets to the moon, and the rockets were blowing up, and they kept going because it's an advancement of civilization. It's an advancement to take life somewhere else. That has a bigger meaning in the individual. So we're weighing up, how far do we go with the individual, and is it adding to the greater good, or has it become something selfish and destructive? Always valuing it. Like, I think it might have been a Sadhguru talk or something, but like, people climbing, Krishnamurti, he talks big about it. It's like, why are people doing these things where we're climbing such big mountains or risking our lives, and for what? What's the outcome other than I've accomplished and I've done this? But different medicine for different people at different times.
Yeah. Right, I think, like you said, we pretty much hit our 1:15 mark there. This is a beautiful conversation. I think it's one of my more favourite ones. We didn't really have a topic this time, did we? We just kind of delved into it. Time management, I think.
A topic big for both of us.
Yeah, it's something that we both struggle with, so it's definitely something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people that are listening to this will resonate with as well. So hopefully we've given them a few pointers there. Right, mate, I think I've got 3 minutes on my camera left in terms of memory, so we'll just wrap it there. So this was podcast number 12, just with Craig and I, and you can catch us on YouTube, it's on Spotify, and what other platforms have you got?
Spotify, YouTube,
and then
Instagram.
A preview on Instagram, and that's pretty much it. The three that we're using. Craig, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, man. Stay conscious.
Right. Cool, guys. We'll see you in the next podcast.